So the first thing I want to acknowledge is that today is my 26th episode, which means I've been doing this for 6 months, which is crazy. Um, it's been fun. I've learned a lot. I've got a lot more to learn, and I hope you enjoy it. I'd love to get feedback. If you're listening to this podcast, watching it, please send me a note, send me an email, text me if you know me. If you don't know me, go to authbition.com, Authbition. It's authenticity and ambition combined, authbition.com. And you can connect with me there and let me know how I'm doing. Really curious. 6 months in, should I do another 6 months? All right, so it's less than a week to Halloween. I thought I would read something spooky. I don't really have a Halloween specific story, but I do have a story that was kind of freaky as I was scrolling through the things that I've written over the past couple of years, and this one jumped out at me. It's called "My Parents' Fear of Cults Made Them Act Like One. The Irony of Control in the Name of Protection." This was published in The Narrative Arc. It's absolutely one of my top favorite publications on Medium. If you don't know it, check it out, The Narrative Arc. And I wrote this it was published in The Narrative Arc last July. So it opens with a picture of me as a baby, and I think it's me. Could possibly be my sister, but I think it's me in a crib. And I've got this baby Jesus and a blue bear over the top of me in this little crib. I think it's a pretty freaky picture. So check out the actual essay, which I'll put in the show notes. All right, so let me get to it here. Before I could speak, I had an allergic reaction to church. As a toddler, I slammed my hard-soled shoes against the wooden pews in protest. As I grew up, my antics didn't change. When the priest asked us to stand, I sat. When instructed to kneel, I stood. When invited to sit, I sat, reluctantly. I staunchly rejected the church from my earliest memories. This was especially disconcerting for my parents. My dad was, and still is, a Catholic deacon. My mom was a teacher at St. Mary's. I'm not sure how my defiance was born. It started as just that. Do the opposite. But as I headed into grammar school and was put through the ringer of preparing for First Communion, I began to make logical arguments to back up my refusal. 4 stories spoken from the altar, from the Bible, served as my defense. One standout story was about a bleeding woman who touched Jesus' robe in secret. She'd suffered for 12 years, desperate for healing, yet she didn't ask permission or make a public plea. She reached quietly. Jesus turned and told her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." That's in Luke 8, chapter 8, 48. He didn't say, "I healed you," or demand a ritual. Her power, her healing came from within. That stuck with me. Another was from the 10 Commandments. "You shall not make for yourself a carved image. You shall not bow down to them or worship them." That's from Exodus 20:4-5. But every Sunday, I was surrounded by stone statues, golden saints, and stained glass icons. People knelt before them, lit candles in their honor, and signed the cross in their presence. I didn't understand why a religion that banned idol worship built entire cathedrals full of them. Then there was the story where Jesus stormed the temple. He saw merchants and money changers profiting inside a place meant for prayer, and he flipped their tables. "My house will be called a house of prayer," he said, "but you are making it a den of robbers." That's from Matthew 21:13. At church, I watched straw baskets pass down pews like clockwork. Guilt-laced sermons reminded us to tithe, while gold chalices shimmered on the altar. I couldn't unsee the contradiction. And finally, Jesus' command to pray privately. When you pray, go to your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. That's in Matthew 6:6. But on Ash Wednesday, people walked around with crosses drawn on their foreheads. We processed, fasted, and sacrificed publicly. It felt less like humility and more like performance. I was told these acts were sacred, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they were for show. These stories didn't make me lose faith. They gave me my own. I didn't believe God lived in statues or rituals, but in stillness inside me. I didn't need to sit in a gilded room to find the divine. I could find her in my questions, in quiet moments, in my own truth. What looked like rebellion to my parents felt like spiritual honesty to me. I wasn't rejecting God. I was refusing to pretend. When I articulated these arguments to my parents, I was only 7 years old. Their biggest fear was not my rejection of the church. It was my vulnerability to cults. The church is an anchor. It's a safe place. Without it, you're swimming in open water without a shore to return to. You'll be convinced to join a cult. This wasn't a subtle, unspoken fear. These words were clearly communicated to me. My parents forbade everything that could even loosely be tied to cult-like swindlers. No friends who weren't Catholics. No playing with Ouija boards. No Dungeons and Dragons. Their effort to deny such devilish behavior was to no avail. Their fears were not unfounded. It was the 1970s. Jonestown was still fresh. Manson's eyes stared from every newspaper. The Moonies were recruiting kids on campuses. The fear wasn't abstract. It was televised. It wasn't just a spiritual risk. It was a matter of life and death. My parents weren't merely being strict. They were terrified I'd drink something laced with devotion and never come home. I believe my parents thought they were acting out of love, but they were parenting from a place of fear. If accused of using cult-like activities to protect my sister, brother, and me, they would be offended. My father is in his 90s and still living. He would be mortified if accused of being the cult rather than protecting us from them. I didn't have the language for it back then, but I've since learned about a framework that describes how people get pulled into high control groups. It's called the BITE method. That's B-I-T-E BITE model, developed by Stephen Hassan, a former cult member turned mental health counselor. BITE stands for behavior, information, thought, and emotional control. These are the 4 levers used to manipulate people inside cults. The more levers a group pulls, the more cult-like it becomes. Is it lever or lever, by the way? Just curious. I say it both ways. I'm saying lever right now, but sometimes I say lever. What's unsettling is how familiar these levers feel. Not in some distant compound, but at my dining room table. Behavior control was wrapped in structure and routine. What I wore, what I ate, who I could play with, what shows I could watch. That's not unusual for a kid. Children need guidance. But there's a line between structure and surveillance. When every choice is policed for your own good, autonomy starts to erode. Information control came disguised as protection. The games that were off limits, the TV shows we were encouraged to watch, anything outside the church was suspect, especially if it made me question authority. I wasn't just being sheltered from violence or adult themes. I was being sheltered from spiritual perspectives. Thought control arrived dressed as morality. Questions were fine, so long as they had the right answers. Doubt was framed as disobedience. Curiosity could be dangerous. And in a house where faith and family were intertwined, to question one felt like betraying both. When I said I was agnostic, they called me an atheist. Emotional control was the quietest, but maybe the most powerful. Guilt was a tool. Fear was a fence. The Moonies are gonna get ya was a phrase that hung in the air like incense. Disappointment wasn't just personal, it was spiritual. If I stepped out of line, I wasn't just letting my parents down. My missteps were seen in the eyes of God. None of this was done with malice. My parents weren't trying to control me. They were trying to keep me safe. They feared some cult would brainwash me, but didn't see how their fear shaped the walls around me. I'm not judging them. I'm noticing. There's a difference. And maybe that's the real invitation here, to observe, without judgment, the systems we pass down, to choose presence over fear, and to guide with love, not levers or levers. Learning about the bite model was enlightening for me. I'm a father. I've been protective. It doesn't mean all parenting is coercive or that boundaries are harmful. Children need guidance, safety, and care. The difference lies in intent, flexibility, and respect for the child's growing autonomy. Parents who engage in dialogue, model vulnerability, apologize, and encourage critical thinking are countering the bite tendencies, even if we occasionally resort to control out of fear or habit. As for me, I never got sucked into any cult, not one they were afraid of, nor the one they tried to sell me. I'm still called an atheist from time to time, or too Hindu. That one gave me a chuckle. I'm grateful for my spirituality, whatever it is called. I don't know, I had fun with this one. It's a little bit spooky. You know, all these religious and cult themes here coming up on, Halloween in less than a week, All Hallows Eve. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it made you think. Check out that bite model. It was kind of interesting when I learned about it. And namaste. I'll see you next week.